Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and I'm gonna have to fix that intro. It cuts off pretty horribly. Anyway, thank you very much for being here. It's World Building Wednesday, and on World Building Wednesday, well, we like to talk about world building. And this week we are. Today we're going to delve into dreams, nightmares, and a little bit of Maelstrom, Pandemonium, changing landscapes. Um, the idea of using the environment and the environment itself is one in which there is continuous and multiple levels of shifting and morphing and that sort of thing. So, the idea of this came about because I was working on a little rules light RPG called Dreamfire, and I've always been interested in like dreamscapes. The idea of turning inward, having an internal mental landscape as a dungeon, as a place to travel. Now, not necessarily it can absolutely be for player characters, but maybe players are taking their characters through the mindscape of someone else, maybe an innocent victim that has some information. There are a number of movies that we're going to talk about that involve dream-like realms, but this also came about because of a thread in one of my social medias, and someone was talking about exploration, but not in the physical sense, but in the discovery sense. Well, meaning like not necessarily adventure in terms of running, jumping, swimming, climbing, uh, swinging, sailing, not that kind of thing, but exploring an environment to discover uh, bits of pieces of information, of self discovery, and more. And we've seen this in plenty of movies where you have individuals traveling through unknown regions, and it's both a story of maybe survival, but also like maybe coming of age or learning new levels of strength, and or maybe like a bonding kind of uh, thing where you get a number of people trying to survive in a hostile region, and so that happens to be a great part of exploration. But unfortunately, there aren't very many tools to to uh, mechanically represent the ephemeral thing that we're trying to talk about, whether it is um, uh, releasing of guilt or reliving terrible past experiences of trauma or running through nightmare realms and things like that. So I thought we would try to come up with those kind of things. Hey, Mike, one of our co-hosts says, I guess the dream's owner affects the terrain. So entering on a person's dream would be a different landscape from another. I agree with that. I think if human beings, the movie in time to bring up movies. What Dreams May Come, Inception. There's a movie called Dreamscape itself. Another one that didn't get a lot of love, but I think is an excellent portrayal, is a movie called The Cell. In and that one it is very much like role playing centered, where in the movie The Cell you have a captured serial killer, and there's a child psychologist and a detective, and they both go into the serial killer's brain because the serial killer has captured someone and they don't know where this individual is. And so within the brain of the serial killer, there's an innocent child running around this nightmarish realm being chased by what essentially is a dream demon, is a dream king who represents all of the trauma he's going through. And uh, Jennifer Lopez, who plays the child psychologist, tries to protect the child, and the child leading them to discovering the evidence to save this innocent person in the awakened world, and within the dream world, confronting this person who is like this dream master running around this world and shaped by the experiences. And I think it would be maybe because dreams are so chaotic that they could be anything, that it's much like looking at a blank canvas, like an artist looking at a blank canvas, where it's far more difficult to come up with a great idea and create beautiful art with a blank canvas than it would be to limit the artist's palette. Like, if you give an artist only three colors, they must make an animal, a building, and a, I don't know, a device. Like, once you start to limit the choices, then I think it's easier for us to accept, like, oh well, maybe the five-room dungeon in this person's mind is represented by, and then start to fill out the blanks, like, okay, well, this person went through trauma, so the first room will be their childhood, the second room will be when they left home, the third room, like, you could do it that way, and try to conceptualize in a physical sense what the individual's going through. But anyway, so Mike Gould says, as far as how the landscape affects the players, would perhaps invoke rolling against a DC, like elements from a target's past, such as guilt for losing friends in battle, would manifest as that event, but twisted. I agree with that. Like, if let's go with like I'm going to call it classic, but I don't want to get too. I don't want to make this a little bit too like I don't want to get dinged in YouTube. So let's say let's say we talk about childhood bullies. So in a role playing game like fantasy, a childhood bully could easily be like an ogre or a troll, or, well, usually it's not one bully. Usually it's a bully with a bunch of sycophants. But the same thing applies, right? Like, the bully's a hill giant and the sycophants are ghouls or something, and and the individual being affected by it, who was being bullied at the time, might be consider themselves to be like a sprite or a halfling or something, even if they physically don't look like that. But in a dream world, they they very much could. And the idea of mixing and matching environments as well, like waterfalls coming out of buildings with that are where the top of the building's on fire, but the fire's not spreading, along with torrential rain in the backyard of the building, but like a massive desert in the front. Like, I think you could do that as well. Princess Brawhammer, hey, what's going on? Related thing, going into people's memories and changing them, a memory scape. Yeah, like that could be and like I said, this was a confluence of a number of ideas, where in the online thread was, in the OSR, there was a reason why you wanted to explore. And one of the reasons for exploring was because player characters in the OSR are very fragile. So you want as much information as possible. And sometimes when you went through your discoveries, you would find items that you needed. The classic finding a mirror or a mirror shield to fight the Medusa later on in the dungeon was needed. You needed to explore to find these trinkets and objects, whether it's keys or documents or something of that nature, to allow you to navigate through the dungeon in a safer manner. You knew, hey, you found a key, you knew you needed to keep the key. Now you weren't sure what lock it would go into, but you put the stuff in your pockets and carried it along. I think in a dreamscape, you could do the same thing, but they could be non-Euclidean collect collections, um, bits of pieces of memorial debris that you could use to solve a thing, like the NPC who's the one that suffered the trauma might be the one that's creating all the evil things in the dungeon, but protecting that individual and getting them to the source of their strength, or the source of their pain, may be the way to fight it. Mike goes on and says, perhaps players who roll high enough against that DC could affect the landscape, sort of a sliding scale of success or failure. I could see that as well. Like there's a there's a, Grand Canyon-sized chasm. You need to get from one side to the other. It could be an intelligence roll or some kind of like willpower, wisdom, or something like that to be able to cross the chasm that is within the mind of the individual that they're traveling through. I don't know. Yeah, avoiding or negotiating around, let's say that house is still on fire, and yeah, maybe the PCs are suffering damage, but maybe to get past the fire is not about putting the fire out. It could be understanding that the fire isn't real, like a disbelief. It could be shaping the environment, you know, creating a bridge across the chasm is a matter of shaping the dream realm. It may be collecting little bits and baubles, like you find some children's toys, but you find out that the little toys represent real life-sized things within the dreamscape. I don't know. Mike says fear of fire might include chasing a a method through a excuse me. Wow. Fear of fire might include chasing a method through a smoky terrain while overcoming illusions of your fellow players burning. And yeah, I mean, is it would damage be real? Now I would default and say, well, yeah. I mean, even if it's a dreamscape, it's real. But each dreamscaped room may not have with it following s- conditions into the next room. Like, yeah, the PCs are burning, and you've got to like chase down the method, fight off the fire elementals and the two, what are they called, salamanders or something like that. And then when you go into the air quotes next room, or the deeper into the subconscious, all that burn stuff happened. Yeah, it disappeared. Or you could still lose hit points. Remember, hit points aren't necessarily physical. It could be like psychological. You could portray it and tell your players, hey, this is psychological. Like if you die in the dream, you're dead. But are you burning into the next room? No, you've just suffered like psychological harm. In the real world, maybe their noses, the classic psychic damage where their nose and ears are bleeding or something like that. Yeah. Mike says, honestly, the ability to improvise would rule here, especially if you can invoke visual descriptions. I agree. And y- y- like you would have to establish some kind of rule, like Mike mentioned, that overcoming a DC, and then allow the players to have some way to shape things. Hey, I've got a key, but there's no lock. Is it possible for me to create a door in this blank wall? And you go, oh well, here's a DC. It's a DC 18. It's very difficult, but sure, you may be able to open up a door that doesn't exist, or unlock the, like in the movie Inception, right? They were trying, the whole movie of Inception was a mental heist. They had to get into the locked safe that I presume is in everyone's mind, and then incept an idea deep into the subconscious of that individual. So it's possible, like, hey, we first need to get the code to get into the safe, which in the movie Inception they did. They had to like, what's the first number that comes to your mind? And the person was like, 38742, right? And then they come to find out that was literally the combination to the safe in his own mind, even though the individual being questioned was just like, first thing that came to my mind, blah 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 blah. you know. Uh, in 5e, earning inspiration might allow you to spend that inspiration. I was going to go there. Yeah, to alter the environment. Say a dream contains 5 elements that are problematic. Spending inspiration allows the PT to describe how one element becomes resolved. And I love that idea, because inspiration is a limited resource, and players may have to choose between, like, do I spend inspiration to navigate the demon that's in their mind because the demon represents their guilt, or do I keep the inspiration and then use it to snuff out the fire of the hellscape, right? I can change the environment. I use my inspiration to snuff out the fire, and the demon's like, what happened here, what? you know um Plus, going with the non-Euclidean shaping of the world, the idea that a vast expanse can be crossed in a few steps. The idea that the players could very easily go from um, being hugely tall to extremely small, especially if they are within the someone else's trauma. If someone, like, an example would be, maybe someone feels that they're not um, being recognized, that they feel very small in their own world. Everyone else is giant sized, according to their subconscious. And so maybe the PCs are tiny and are running around this person's brain. And the only way to, get to the other side, you spend the inspiration to help this individual grow to allow their, oh, what would you call, like, their to affect their psychology, to have them face off against their own fears or something. I don't know. There's plenty of ways to do it. Mike says, speaking of Inception, here's a new mechanic based on the spinning top. Okay, if a PC wants to alter the environment without using inspiration, they have to spin a coin. They have until that coin stops. Yeah. Um, we've seen what's the Kickstarter, the Shadow Dark Kickstarter, and what's another one? I did a review of something called Dive for the Mothership. It's a supplement for the Mothership role playing game where real world time, a real world out of game element affects the in game thing. Like, for example, in Dive, it was you run out of air in 30 minutes, and that was 30 minutes of game time. So you have air tanks, and, like, what I would do is just, this is just a side note, but, like, in that particular deep sea diving horror role playing game, even if they found air tanks, I would say, guess what? Every 30 minutes, one of those air tanks just happens to be empty, including the ones you're carrying and the ones you find in the dungeon, right? And then that puts a timer on it. I think the spinning the coin and describing how you're changing the environment would be pretty cool, unless you're really good at it. Say, hey, listen, you got to take one of these coins and spin it. That'd be awesome. Dante, hey, what's going on there, dude? Says dream shaping as an ability might base the difficulty on how different you want to change something. You could dream as an action bullets coming at you, into doves, but that's harder to do than uh than into BBs. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Like, and is it permanent? Is it temporary? Like, do you shape the dreams? Um, I don't know. Like, when the bullets come at you and you turn them into doves, and like you said, it might be more difficult to do that. Are they permanently doves, or is it just you're like, we need to get out of here because this person's dreams are really going to come at us? Which, in the movie Inception, that was a rule, right? That one of the rules was, the more you affect the environment, the more the person's subconscious tries to shut that shit down, right? So player characters may say, hey, let's start shaping the environment, but the random monsters that start coming, or the CR level, if you want to go fifth edition, the CR level of monsters that come after PCs might keep growing. So in the beginning, it's goblins, and then it's hobgoblins, and then it's ogres and trolls, and then it's some kind of fiends, or what. Like, it keeps growing and getting stronger, and there's more of them. So that may be a thing as well. Um, moving to describe. An accepted description reduces the DC down one step from, say, 25 to 20, etc. Ooh. Also, we can do something to confound the player character's actions. So you want to make a door in the wall where you're going to have to concentrate on that, right? So fighters and rangers and martial characters might have to have concentration, um, give them concentration roles to affect the environment to keep it that way. Maybe to let the players run across the bridge to cross the chasm before the enemy gets there. Otherwise, the bridge doesn't exist, or you disbelieve the bridge, and the fighter might have to stand there and hold off the enemies while concentrating on this bridge that just so happens to exist now. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. I think establishing some rules, like, for example, discovering small trinkets or toys or medallions or fobs or something within the subconscious of a person's mind. Like, for example, maybe, um, okay, there's a term called, like, hanging a lantern on a thing, where you have an idea, but it's not fleshed out, so you hang a lantern on it to come back to it later. Maybe in people's dreams there are these, like the spinning top, everyone is supposed to have a thing that links them back to reality, and they might be just small. It might seem insignificant. We go with fantasy. Maybe there are small stones with carved runes in them or glyphs or something. And no matter what the dreamscape is, if you find that little stone, put it in your pocket. That may represent a thing or allow you to change it or pass through it safely or whatever. I don't know. Mike says some classes might be more adept at dream rules. A wild mage, certain druids. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Old one warlocks. Yep. Psionic warriors and rogues, aberrant mind sorcerers, etc. might be more proficient or gain an ability. I definitely agree. Now, if you didn't want to, I think if you didn't want to make some characters more special than others, you could, like a fighter, character fighter might be very good at battle in a dream world, and like maybe they're able to perform stunts that they really couldn't do in the physical realm, right? Whereas maybe the mage can cast a spell that otherwise they wouldn't be able to do. So I don't know. Dante says another mechanic might be it's easier to shape, add, or remove dream objects when no one else is looking at it. Yeah, yeah. It's the peripheral vision idea, right? Like you look around the corner, you're like, I thought I saw something. The deja vu. Didn't I just see that cat? What was that in? They use that in the Matrix a little bit, right? Like, is that the same cat? And the other ones are like, wait, did you see another cat, or is it the same cat? And like, I don't know, look like it's the exact same cat. But anyway, Dante says, like turn around and the hallway is now a room. That might be the DM's ability. Yeah, or the DM. You could do this above board, right? As you're the game master narrator, and you go, listen, the hallway you just went down has the 60-foot hallway you just walked down is now a brick wall behind you, unless, right? Like it could be this could be a game of one-upsmanship and trade, but you do it above board as the the narrator. You go, I'm going to tell you right now, the room, unless you spend inspiration, or hey, I'm going to do a GM intrusion going the cipher system, the room starts getting smaller and smaller. Or are you getting bigger? Right. And then the player character goes, I'm going to pull out one of the runes and stop this. You go, okay, you can spend one if you want to do that. Something like that. Like you could even make non Euclidean traps. Wow, going back to Inception, the MC Escher stairs that we saw in the movie, where one of the main characters runs up a set of stairs to, no, they go down a set of stairs to appear at the top of the stairs to knock somebody off of it, you know. So that would be pretty interesting. Now there's let me get to you guys who are the co-hosts first, and then I'll get back to it. So Mr. Spenzar, what's going on? Communicating plot information, okay, using dreams doesn't get used enough in fantasy tabletop. I agree with you. For some reason, prophetic dreams, yeah, aren't common. They aren't. I think it's because you, I you have to be vague enough for it to fit into player characters who are a little bit chaotic in what they do, but it has to be solid enough that it makes sense. And maybe we just don't follow that. It's hard for us to like twist the knobs on like prophecies and dreams. But I mean, I think you could have an easy one-off. Let's say one of your players can't show up for your game, so you just go, hey, let's do a one shot where the party is asleep and they're camping out in their sleep, and then the dungeon is going into a dream, and that dream does it deal with the main plot? Maybe, maybe not. But in the dream, they're running around this dream world. Yeah, I think you could do that. Why not? And then just have the players wake up later, and they earn the information they need to defeat the boss later on, right? Yeah. Mike says a stuffy that the fighter had. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A stuffy that the fighter had as a kid might animate under a druid's command as a real bear, or a fighter might weaponize mundane items in a dream. Hell's yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. In my Dreamfire RPG, like you can have an ally that's your imaginary friend. And you just get to describe what your imaginary friend is like, which would be kind of cool. I think I need to add some rules to it, but but it's a rules like system. So if you have an imaginary friend like Boing Boing or Bing Bong, or what was Inside Out. Um yeah, yeah. Mike says, getting back to that DC idea, a crit fail might turn a wall into a gelatinous cube, or literally turn an object into a mimic. Oh, that's a great idea. What a way to on the fly, like retcon what, well, it doesn't have to be a retcon, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe there's so many dangers, and the dangers of the dream are dependent upon the players. That would be putting putting the horrifics in the players' hands would be pretty interesting, especially if you could focus it down to what the players are like. Like a rogue might keep creating like mimics and gelatinous cube things because they keep going off by themselves to steal stuff, whereas the fighter might keep coming across random hordes of goblinoids that keep running down the hallways after them, coming out of nowhere. And yeah, that would be kind of cool. Now how would if you give this, somebody might try to play the system and go, well, the most dangerous things that are to my character are flumps, lawful good ones too. But I mean, I think it would be awesome. I think there's a movie called What Dreams May Come that is brilliant in its depiction of a nightmarish. It's more, I mean, yes, it's more afterlife, the movie, but I think it still falls into that dream, a tranquility versus uh darkness kind of thing. And it's a Robin Williams film. It is brilliant. The set designs and the direction on that movie is awesome. And it does bring up a fact of one thing in there, is that it brings up the fact that even in a dream, you yourself may not be what you think you are. So it would be interesting to have players move from like room to, and when I say room, I don't mean a literal room. It could be landscape to landscape, but maybe even the players aren't what they think they are. Maybe each room is set by the player characters. So in the fighters Dreamscape, all the players are warriors. Like the druid is strapped in armor, and the rogue is in full plate, and they're mounted cavalry or something. And yeah, is it working against their character types? Sure, but they can't escape it until they figure out a way to navigate through it. And then maybe later on, the when they get into the jungle, and it's the druid's specialty, but maybe all the other player characters are like animals that are like uh um you know within the jungle. Maybe the fighter becomes a panther, and the rogue becomes like some kind of bonobo, or some other kind of like simian, or swinging through the trees, or whatever. Like you, maybe physically you don't have to be what you are. There's other hazards too, right? Like the burning, the eternal falling, the turning to stone, and because you can't move any longer, being paralyzed by fear, or shrinking into nothing because you feel insignificant. The wounds that open up on you because of the guilt that you feel because you couldn't save someone or whatever. Dante says a dream game with warrior classes would be cool to have combat styles based on dream types. Yeah. Like falling dreams get bonuses for attacking down. Repetitive dreamers get bonuses for repeat actions. Ooh. Ooh. Like dream classifications? You could not describe them and then let the players pick from a group of 6 to 8 choices. Like, are um players could actually keep repeating the same actions over and over again. The warrior fighter goes into battle to defeat enemies, defeats them. You know, the def- has the battle start when the sun comes up, defeats them when the sun goes down. When the sun comes up, it happens all over again and keeps happening over and over until they figure out how to get past it. I don't know. Mr. Spenzar mentions having players who go so far as to outline their phobias. Yeah, critical failures, and introduce a phobia which complicates events and gives penalties to the affected player. I think you could even do if you've played with this group for a little while, you could even go back in time and go, "Hey, remember that time you crit failed?" Now it becomes a like a physical it becomes the physical embodiment of that failure from before. You'd have to have some really good players who literally are like, "Yeah, my barbarian is scared of as a child has was always scared of, I don't know, this bear that was in the woods, but in this thing it's a I don't know, it's some kind of demonic it's the New Mutants demonic demon bear saga, right? Like it's not just a bear. This thing is a CR-17, 80-foot bear that's got the same abilities as like a Baylor or a Balor or a Pit Fiend or something like that. Drudfa says Dreamscape and Hellscapes can be very similar. Well, listen, some of our nightmare some of our dreams are tranquil, but some of our nightmares are literal hellscapes. And those hellscapes could be um, defined by each individual. Like there could be some commonalities and then some twists on those commonalities, especially if players bring their own baggage with them. So, if you ask your players, okay, you need to pick three, go through three failures or phobias or unfinished business, whatever, and then you bring those things with you. Yeah, Mike says since it hasn't come up yet, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is rife with ideas. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, granted, the Elm Street movies are a bit old and they're a bit dated, but there were some pretty good ideas in there. There the how do I explain this? There were elements in the Nightmare on Elm Street series that really worked. I mean, people waking up from dreams only to realize they were still dreaming, and there were like running down the street only to turn the corner to run down the exact same street again. Um, there's something pretty that freaked me out in a movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where the main character saw a guy flirting with his girlfriend and was seen from the back, and when he went to spin the adversary around, he had a back on both sides of his body, if that makes sense. um it's weird to describe, and actually the same thing happened in that, where the character was running down the street and turned the corner and was running down the exact same street he ran down before. um oh sorry, there was another dream like, oh man, I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. Yeah, but anyway, going back to Nightmare on Elm Street, there was a Dream Warriors movie where the characters in the movie, I guess they are players in a role playing game, were able to harness their power in the dream realm, and that was pretty cool. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, and I think just being able, I mean, hell, if we're going to go fantasy, we could friggin' mix and match, pick some random spells, random creatures, and mix and match things that really shouldn't belong together, but do. You know, we human beings can suffer a lot of stress and a lot of trauma over time. So, the idea that our boss is a big giant, and we're also scared that there's people who are scared of falling, scared of drowning, scared of burning up, feeling insignificant, feeling the trauma of being used and abused or something, and you could kind of mix and match all that together. You could have torrential rain with forest fires, with sand dunes or something if you want to. You could have. I mean, I don't know how you would. I suppose you could have like if you're falling down an eternal pit and the PCs or they're falling out of the sky or something. You could have athletics or acrobatics checks to like parachute your way through something. I don't know. It would be pretty awesome. Of course, the idea of being swallowed by a creature and the dungeon is inside of a living creature is also a big thing. Hellscapes, I like Drew and Fuzz brought up Dreamscapes and Hellscapes can be very very similar. Um, Dante's Inferno is a is an excellent example of like hell isn't necessarily burning. Hell is what you conceive of it, and so the fighter that can't win a battle, the druid that sees their forest being destroyed or dying around them, the rogue that is shackled and thrown into the deepest part of a dungeon and being arrested or something. I mean, all of those things could very well, and the player characters might have to like maybe a single player can't get through that particular horror, but they need the help of their allies to get through it. Yeah. Inside Out, yeah, Inside Out and Wreck It Ralph come to mind as dreamscapes. I love Inside Out. Inside Out is, I think, is a. It's not the most. It it except for Bing Bong. It doesn't have the most like iconic scenes in it, but overall, I think is a brilliant movie about a young girl and all the emotions in her head running around inside of her head in this psychological dreamscape in her mind to navigate it to help this girl get back to her family because she tries to run away. Spoiler alert, but not much of a spoiler alert because the her emotions start moving through this girl's mind and they bump up against memories, which would be pretty interesting, like asking your players what kind of memories they have and then like shifting them around a bit so that they have like a fantastical element to it. Um, the memory of a character being, you know, maybe they were given um, uh, an heirloom from their family and supposed to take it with them for, for their lifetime, or and go back to that moment to get their heirloom in their mind, a memory, and put it in their pocket because they're going to need it later, or a a young uh, a young memory where one of their loved ones says goodbye and goes off into the distance and never to return. But maybe, just maybe, in this time they can actually go over the horizon and follow the family member that disappeared and maybe confront the dangers that happen. We all have to, there's a reason why they're called murder hobos, because most of the time their families end up dying, but maybe a player character could save their family. We saw this in the there's a very famous one-shot comic book involving Superman's birthday, which was turned into an animated version of the same thing, in which there's a magical plant, a plant with tentacles on it that's large enough to hold your chest. And if the plant wraps around you, it puts you into a catatonic state in which you're able to relive a traumatic moment. And like there's a traumatic moment where Batman is captured by the flower and he's able to um instead of his parents dying in the crime alley, his dad fights back against the criminal and starts like punching the hell out of the criminal. Young Bruce Wayne is like, "Yeah, go ahead, Dad." His dad is just like punching the dude out and stuff, and mom doesn't die or anything. Yeah, but it mostly revolved around Superman, where Krypton never exploded, and Jor-El doesn't die. Kal-El grows up and he starts to have his own family and everything, and he's got to say goodbye to his fictional child, and it's pretty, because he's got to go back to the real world and say goodbye. I mean, something like that could be a thing. And as a matter of fact, maybe it's just about context and not changing the rules at all. A a charm spell from an enemy might be putting someone into a tranquil dream so much that it's addictive, or even being petrified, turned to stone, is internally maybe the player character feels what it would be like. I don't want to leave this. I don't want to leave this. This feels awesome, right? And other players are like, keep making, you got to make your saving throw to break out of the petrification. And the player character's like, I'm not leaving this. This feels awesome. They just crowned me king, gave me a kingdom. I'm not. I was ousted as a noble. My character, my character was ousted as a noble. I'm staying right here because I've got my whole kingdom and everything. Everyone loves me. Um, but yeah, you could come up with a random table of sorts, and the landscape shifts and starts to shift and change in that randomized table. Instead of random monsters, maybe it's random elements that start coming into the dream realm, like um, mountains collapsing and floodwaters coming in for no good reason, and buildings starting to uh, you can go into the tavern once, but when you try to open up the tavern door again, it's just a flat canvas or something, or it's nothing more than a tapestry hanging on the wall. It's not real, or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could play with this idea that when a player clears a room out, it actually turns into like a matte painting on the wall behind them or something. Um, Mike says Star Trek, The Next Generation, Inner Light says, I think, where Picard lives a full life, yes, on another world, very dreamscape. I don't remember the name of that episode either, but yeah, there was one where he lives an entire lifetime, and come to find out that it was a dreamscape of a dead alien species that wanted people that encountered the like satellite monolith to live out um, to appreciate their culture. And I think Picard lived an entire lifetime in like a couple of moments inside of it, which could be a thing in a game where the players go through the dungeon and it takes them a long time, but it was really them just taking a nap and they wake up from it. Mike says, which makes me think that having objects from the dreamscape manifesting in the real world, like Picard's tin whistle, would be a great mind fuck. Yeah. Um, there's a If you go to Questing Beasts, Ben just released a review of a what's the name of it? Just released a review of not channel content. Where is it? Not Sly Flourish. Released a review of a product in which I'm gonna because I gotta find it. Mm-mm. Oh no, no, that's not what I want to do. Um, but anyway, in the review of the product, and I want to get the name of the product. This is what I'm trying. Aberrant Reflections, Dimension Hopping Puzzle Design. It's called Aberrant Reflections, and on Questing Beast, and in the dungeon is designed with the real world and a reflected world. So there are things in mirrors that may or may not be in the real world. So there's something in the real world, but it's not in the reflection, or it's in the reflective world and not in the real world. And the players can find mechanisms within the dungeon to go into the reflected world and our real world and things like that. Like, for example, the players find a key that's floating in the air, but you've come to find out it's in the backpack in a pocket of a dead adventurer in the mirror world. So when you grab the key is as heavy as the dead body of the adventurer in the mirror world, even though all you're doing is holding on to the key. And like there's different things like there you could play with adventure or dungeon design by having things um, in a dream realm that just should not exist. Yeah. Dante says Deep Space Nine. The wormhole aliens communicate through a dreamscape like kind of thing. Yep, yep. The ability to go into someone's mind to communicate with them is a very dreamscapish kind of thing. Instead of just going, oh well, they just communicate with you telepathically. Maybe it's like closing your eyes and you're in a dreamscape talking with the individual or entity or something that is trying to communicate with you. Mike says, "What's the Voyager episode with the nightmare clown when a nightmare takes over?" I don't remember. Yes, but I don't remember that one. For some reason, I just don't. In Voyager, I don't remember that. Although, let's be honest, most television shows that have lasted a while always have like a Halloween episode, like a Halloween dreamscape. This shouldn't exist, but it does episode. Mm-mm-mm. Dream says I was just about to write about DS9 too, since that is my favorite Star Trek show still. Really, yeah, D Space Nine is excellent. I think I think there's a I don't know. I think there's a way to do it to come up with like the dreamscape. Well, like for example, let me think. I once attempted to make a dungeon that was made out of like belief and disbelief. So, for example, there would be like passages, bridges, doors, traps that you could both believe and or disbelieve. So, let's say you saw I don't know, uh, there's a monster in a room and you disbelieve it. So now you think it's fake. So you disbelieve it so it can't affect you. But now that it can't affect you, but your other player does believe in it, you can't help them because for you it's an illusion, but for them it's real. But then you come across a I don't know, a bridge, and you've disbelieved all the illusions, so now you can't walk across the bridge, but the player character that does believe it can walk across it. And then you'd have to like have difficulty trying to re-believe something you disbelieved. Like you could do something like that as well. Um Terrible description of mine, but yeah. Oh, Samara says, "Oh, I love that idea. Also, sorry I'm late. Yeah, I don't apologize here. I turned off my alarm and then blinked, realized I was still tired. Turned over to look for my phone, blinked again, and an hour passed after my alarm. I I love those days, especially when I don't have to work. But yeah, you're all right there, Z." Mike says, "I've used dreams at the table to drop hints to clerics, paladins, warlocks. That's this eight's just next level. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've done that plenty of times where like." The wizard is contacted in their dreams by their mentor or something. TA, what's up, Thomas Anderson? You're, you're all right. Dante's like DS9's my favorite too. Verisimilitude. All right, here we go. Verisimilitude becomes a whole nother meaning when people can choose what is real. Yeah. Especially if it's like if you have to figure out how the puzzles work. I'm going back to Questing Beast. In Questing Beast's um review of the adventure, in the adventure they don't tell you how to solve the riddle. For example, in one part of the review, in the mirror there's a statue and then there's a reflection of the statue, but the statues are not facing in the same directions. And so there's a part where if the players turn the statue so that they are actual reflections of each other, it opens up a portal for you to go from one to the other. There's no hint that that's what you're supposed to do. It just happens. And there's something else, like there's a gauntlet that can move objects in the dream realm, but I mean in the mirror realm, but not in the real realm, or vice versa. So maybe there's a door that doesn't exist where you're standing, but does exist in the reflection, and the only way to turn the handle of the door is to get this gauntlet that can reach out and touch a thing that doesn't exist where you're standing but does exist in dream. Anyway, but yeah. I think doing things like that in a dreamscape might be kind of cool, like the idea of like Alice in Wonderland, right? PCs come to a door that's only 2 inches tall. Maybe a field mouse can get through it. The druid can walk through the door if they turn into a mouse to get to the other side of the door, maybe to then open it up and then it becomes like real sized or something. Or maybe if they party can find a potion to shrink themselves down, things like that. Tom Sanders says dreamscape or dreamscaping. I used to be part of a group that experimented with remote viewing, mind switch tech, and dreamscaping while in lucid dreams. I wonder what a game system. I wonder what a game system will be built on science that is actively pursued, like Cylons. I I know I'm butchering the pronunciation. Cylarons, mind controllable switches, remote viewing, and such, with it extended into other ways beyond. You know, um, little again, little self promotion. My Dreamfire rules light game is about being like dream warriors. You're going into people's dreams and helping them uh, solve their traumas and things like that. Um, going into dreamscapes and things like that. Deadman says the episode of Voyager was titled "The Thaw." Did not know that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. With the nightmare scape and the clowns and yeah. TA says like using the dreamscaping and remote viewing to say remote control another person, even using it to control someone a week ago, or say remote viewing a side tech for ships uh, long range sensors. There was a book by C.S. Friedman, can't remember it, sci-fi book where the pilots they to the pilots didn't have radios. They used psychic connection to to communicate with each other, and it allowed them to reduce the weight of their starships, and it increased them just a high enough percentage to make them better than the enemy, and no one could figure it out. And it was like, oh, it was because they reduced, what could they remove out of the starships, these little fighters, and they took out the communications array. Mike says, this is extra bookkeeping, but imagine an entire campaign like this. The players roll two characters, the person they are in real life and who they are in the dreams. A rogue might wish they were a barbarian. Yeah. Yep. For instance. Yes. Yeah. And I don't know. I think you could, if you wanted to circumvent that, you could just give them stat blocks. Like, they don't necessarily need to be a humanoid, or they don't need to be another like gnome druid becomes a dragonborn paladin or something like that. But you could. It would be interesting to make two different characters. If you wanted to do it temporarily, I would just find like uh, a bunch of stat blocks and let them pick from it. Like maybe the rogue is a doppelganger in a dreamscape or mirrored dreamscape realm, so that when they go to dreams, that's what they are. Maybe the fighter becomes a iron golem or something, and they could play those characters and then maybe hop back and forth or something. I don't know. Thomas Anderson says that all reminds me of the mind tech and statistic tech of Asimov's second book, Second Foundation. Ooh, I don't remember that book, and I know I've read it, and I know the Foundation series came on TV, and I didn't even watch it. But Asimov is, well, I think he could type like 120 words a minute or something. It was crazy. But yeah, mind tech technologies. Heck, you could even have a big bad, some BBEGs who are physically in the real world. They're basically just sleeping in stasis, but they are able to draw out of the dream realm into the real world elements. Like it could be spreading across a landscape, and in the dream realm they're the massive, fearful monsters in their head, because of the fear of what they've become what they fear, and those fears start becoming a real thing. In the book series, oh wow, oh, another book series by C.S. Friedman, the Cold Fire trilogy. In the Cold Fire trilogy, it's a fantasy realm because all the creatures are the embodiment of the fears that everybody had, because of their subconscious. And then one person subconsciously has a fear, that fear becomes real. Other people fear that subconscious reality. Therefore, that subconscious thing becomes more physical every time more people fear it. Because anyway, it was pretty interesting, but it was awesome. Each character only levels in the world they exist. Ooh, now that is an interesting. Hey guys, you can make up 10 levels of characters. You must make two characters. You can split the 10 levels between the two characters. Like a fifth level character one place and a fifth level another one. You could do 3 and 7. You could do 4 and 6. That would be interesting. Hey, what a great way, what a great excuse to have people who can't show up because their character only exists in one dream realm, but not the but they it doesn't exist in the other realm. Like, could you imagine a player in your group like, oh, my character doesn't exist in a physical realm, but it does exist in the dreams, and vice versa? That would be awesome. Two people, two individuals who can't show up all the time share a character. Like one person plays the real world character, the other person plays the dream character. They're the same exact person, psychologically, but they're two different people, physically descriptive wise. That'd be kind of cool. My TA says the thing is the manipulation of events through subtle mental manipulation of statistical outcomes is not too far removed from how think switches made with random event generators like REG switches. Ooh, you're talking about a lot of science fiction here. The first foundation was plotting a course that dude predicted, but it turned out he had a second group that was using their minds to force his predictions to become reality. Yes, 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 yes. In the Foundation series, yes, it was like it was. What was the concept that it cyclical? Everyone knew that society was a cyclical, um, a live, die, repeat mechanism, and try to manipulate who comes out on top while the cycle came about. Something like that. Yeah. Mike says, I can't believe I didn't think of this. As a practicing New Age shaman, boy, PCs become their totems in a dream. PCs become bears, eagles, wolves, ferrets, spiders, whatever. Same hit points, different shape. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. And that would mean they would have to navigate using their new physical forms rather than their humanistic forms. The dream, the a totemic styled way to solve a problem. That's actually pretty cool. Maybe the players travel very far. They meet a new culture. They get to that new culture. The culture is like, sure, you want to, we'll help you out, but you got to go through a dreamscape to do a thing, to meet a thing. And the PCs are like, oh, this shouldn't be a problem. Whatever. But smoke something and you drink something and go into dream realm. What's the big deal? And then they get there and it's like, whoa, my body doesn't look right. I'm a spider, right? TA says, I have the software written to train people to use their minds to switch gates on and off if any was ever interested, written by a group of Princeton University. Ooh, I don't know how silly that that is, the TA, but it is a very good concept though. Zamara says you could use dreams to solve a time puzzle, okay? Where some of the PCs have to solve a puzzle while another set of PCs have to force themselves to dream of that place at a different point in time. Okay, well, where's the rest of it? Shit. Where they have to solve a puzzle that is only accessible in that time, but must be solved at the same time as that first puzzle. Yes, 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 yes. I get it. Yeah, the puzzle isn't just solving the puzzle. The puzzle has to do with time. Mufa, hey, what's going on? Yeah, Dead Man says Invisible Sun. This has totally been done. The dream realm being a real thing. Invisible Sun is a dreamscape. Invisible Sun is a dreamscape written game, which has some pretty interesting creation into it, including the idea that you return back to your house and the other player characters get to fill things in your house. They get to put something in your house that you wasn't there before, that you don't remember but was always there in the first place, something like that. All right, so Mufa says, I want to run a I see what don't worry about the spamming. Mufa says, I want to run a one shot of this now. Some goddess or elemental or fae or whatever that resides in the dream world pulls the PCs in to help as something is causing too many nightmares. Okay. Uh, Players find out it's some sort of Cold War like experiment being done on children. Oh, the horror in the real world. Oh, ouch. I love it, but ow. Because ki- children have the best imaginations. It's sometimes the worst, right? Like what we think of today as not a big deal, kids think of as pretty horrible. A little kid being bullied on a schoolyard. looks at that bully as a troll, right? Like a big ogre or something. Anyway, going on, Mufa continues to say, by government scientists to make children spawn nightmares that attack their enemies in their dreams. And sorry for the spam. Yeah, because kids have great imaginations, but they can think of some horrible. I know I've been able to do that. Yeah, horrible things. Yeah, Dead Man, and just agreeing with Dead Man. Like, yeah, we pull out. I don't know too many people who own and are still playing Invisible Sun, but Invisible Sun is literally, it's the opposite. So in Invisible Sun, basically, our world today is actually the dreaming world with no magic in it. And you have to wake up to go back to the real world, and the real world is a dreamscape. Um, TA says some people develop a device for tracking the energy output of people's minds while experiencing seizures to help predict oncoming seizures too, though it was just sampling them. Ooh. There is a thing. I think that there's going to be a new Joker movie where people have experienced the same, two different people are experiencing the same dream. Hmm. I love the time idea of going through a dream to go back to a particular moment in time. Maybe someone has to rewind back through a traumatic event to unlock a puzzle that they didn't realize was there. Princeton University Engineering Anomalies research, not controlled by them like the stuff from Mindsong, INC, and the pair. Princeton, I love acronyms. Princeton University Engineering Anomalies. Where did was oh, same people developed a device. Okay, yeah. Continuation. Sorry. How would you solve a puzzle that constantly changes its answer because of the meddling of trying to solve it, like quantum effect of changing because of being observed? Ooh. Well, okay, you could. Okay, let's see. You could have three different ways to solve a puzzle, but every time you fail to do it, it switches to the next puzzle, and it keeps shifting back. Okay, so okay, here here's the theory, right? Um, Much like I thought about using dream monsters, maybe you could pick three different monsters, and every round the monster shifts from one type of monster to another. So you could get a giant, like a giant spider, a two-headed Etten, and a what's another one? Um, a harpy. And each round it shifts between, its form shifts from one thing to another, chimera ick like, but a puzzle could be the same thing. So maybe a lock needs to be picked by the rogue. The lock shifts into, I don't know, a face with a riddle, and then it shifts into, um oh, it shifts into very heavy puzzle pieces that need to be put in, stacked in a particular order, so the fighter has to do it. But if the fighter tries to lift up a big heavy weight to put the Tetris pieces together and drops it, it shifts into a lock that the rogue has to try to pick the lock. But the rogue's got to do it quick enough, otherwise it shifts into a magic mouth that gives the riddle, the next clue to the riddle, and they can sit there and try to solve the riddle. But you give the wrong answer, bam, it turns back into those big heavy. Like, you could do something like that, which would be pretty interesting. To like have to keep uh switching pedals or something. I don't know. Thank you, Druden. Druden's like, trolls are people too. I would not stand for that slander of them. Yes, trolls are people too. I apologize for their weird mutating healing ability. Damn trolls. I I don't think we use that enough. Uh Trolls being able to mutate themselves because of what they consume and stuff. TA says, what if the goddess or elemental fae is using dreams of people to universe build because the dreams of the players are actually narration of a universe creation. They just got they just forgot when Awaken. Hold on, okay. Awaken. Yeah, those people made switches. you can control with your mind rather than sampling a mind like a seizure patient to help them cope with knowing when to take a break. Well, maybe somebody is in the grips of like a coma and the PCs have to go into their mind, and maybe they have to go into their mind without being detected because there's some enemies that are able to detect such a travel. I don't know. You have my attention. Reminds me of a device I used to use once at this upside down building. Ooh. Dante says, just remembered Final Fantasy X had a dream theme in its story. Never played it. You would think I would play it. I'm a geeky person. Never played it. The main character was actually a dream in that game. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, anyway, guys, we've come to the very end. Thank you so much for being part of the show. Um, yeah, like we could very easily. I mean, no, I'm gonna leave it on Druden's comment here. But yeah, we could very easily take this concept even further. But I don't think we should limit ourselves. Wow, I don't think we should limit ourselves to our imagination. We are very creative people, and I think um, the idea that I see it, Mike. I think the idea that we are able to use something that's so formless, like a dream, hellscape, nightmares and stuff, and turn that into like an adventure, I think is really cool. I think it's really cool. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The upside down buildings. They're all around in the U.S. The upside down, the Wonderworks upside down house in Panama City Beach, Florida. There is it Ripley's Believe It or Not? I think it's something like that. Ripley's Believe It or Not, with the upside down buildings. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're kind of cool. They have all the little interesting things like the tornadoes. You get to the tube and get to a tornado. Wow, wow. That's very strange there, Z. Very strange. I hope you were all right. They called the hospital to me because they thought I had died in the game because my wave spiked so high. Really? Hmm. Well, just be safe, guys. All right. I think there is okay. All seriousness aside, dealing with real people's trauma and unfinished psychological issues can be pretty sensitive material. So I don't think we want to play with that. So I understand that there may be some players even who bringing up the subject or even dealing with it later might go, I don't really want to be part of this, or um, it brings up some touchy subjects. So I think there should be space to allow for safe space when dealing with that. That being said, I think there's more good than bad that can come from this. And I really like it, especially, how many times do we think about our own characters like psychological issues? That's a rarity. I think there's some great story elements in here. So, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow, of course, is Third Pillar Thursday. We're going to talk about that. But here in world building, it's talking about creating like new realms and dreams and ways to navigate them. And I really appreciate you guys coming with your so much creative energy when it comes to that kind of stuff. So yeah, 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 yeah. Wow, wow, Z. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So here we're going to move us. Says that's the importance of session zero. Hell's yes. Hell yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I know there's a small contingent in the RPG community that's like, we don't need safety tools. But listen, if your grandparents had just passed away and you got into a role playing game and then some element of that reminded you of that, I think you should have some ability to go, hey, can we just fade to black because I'm really feeling it, with even not even having to explain why, because you've had a traumatic experience or death in the family or something happened to a coworker and you didn't understand why, or you know what I mean. So yeah, I think safety tools are very important and to talk about. And remember, session zero doesn't have to happen before the game starts. Session zero can happen at any time. anytime. So check it in. Guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for stopping by. Bring your best tomorrow because we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow as well. Because I think the two are intrinsically related. So, anyway, have a great one. Got to head off to work. You guys have a great day. Have a very good morning, afternoon, evening, late night. I will see you later. Peace.